QR code. To grab this, it'll be in a PDF so that you'll be able to access it later. You have all the information for you. I just want you to be able to get that. Let me grab this real quick.
Turn my computer. I was gonna bring mine.
And it is there for you. And I will send it to Jim so that he can send it out to the participants who were here today as well, if you just prefer to just listen. But you can take a real quick screenshot so you have that information. It is there for you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay. We've got a lot of information to cover in a very short amount of time. So the reason why I made this shareable with you, because if I can't get to everything, I want you to be able to go back and have it. And then my contact information is at the end so that if you need to call me or just want to chat over Zoom about some of the specifics, we can do that as well. My name's Amy Davenport. I am the Regional Dyslexia Consultant. I took over from Nancy in January. And it's been fast and furious since then. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go. Okay, all right, okay. Now he doesn't wanna work. Whatever, I can bypass you. I don't need you, okay? I don't need you. So just know that I forgot one more thing. The link here, Dyslexia and Related Disorders webpage, goes to TEA. Now, the reason why I point this out is because I get a lot of questions from folks like, where do I find the handbook? You can always find the handbook on your front-facing websites of your district's dyslexia page. They are required to post in their special populations, wherever they house dyslexia, they're required to post it there. But if you want your own copy, you can literally go to TEA, Dyslexia and Related Disorders. I put in Texas dyslexia, and this is the first thing that pops up for me every single time. Every single time. This is my go-to webpage. It's up every single day. So I gave that to you in the link on the front part too. Here's the reason why. Here's where we're housing the handbook. We have it in English and Spanish as well. Okay, we also have an appendix which gives us lots of good information about the single pathway identification, special education, how do we code our kids. There's lots of different nuances with special education that dyslexia world has never had to deal with prior because it's been mainly done through 504. We also have handbook resources, and a lot of this information here is designed for parents in English and Spanish. So if you want to watch the actual webinar, you can go and do that. It's a very informative, it's like 30, 45 minutes. It's not very fast. I mean, it's not very long. We also have our resources here that are just there for parents and for our educators to be able to code our students correctly, our allotment information, PEAMS coding. That's how we report to the state who's dyslexic and who's not, so that then we can get funding for that, which is what we want. And then we have our to the administrator's address letters. Those are the letters coming from TEA that tells us you must do this types of things. And on the side here, we have related content with accommodations is probably one that you go to a lot. And then we also have our IDA, which is our International Dyslexia Association, which is a really good for our parents. They have a great parent website. And then Texas Center for Learning Disabilities is another one that I recommend for parents and for educators to go to. But we're gonna pop back in here and we're gonna go to the next slide. So we know the definition. This is on page 1 of our handbook. We have our original definition from 1985 in Texas Education Code 38003. Then in 2002, IDA, International Dyslexia Association, updated it, and it's a much more thorough picture of what dyslexia is as a disability. And so that is also in our tech code on page 1. And so that is where we derive our considerations when we're testing our kids, what are these things that we're seeing? Do we see a pattern of evidence that's coming out for this? And so we know that dyslexia is a specific learning disability. It's neurobiological in origin. And when we watch kids with dyslexia read and they are doing a functional MRI on them, you can actually see underactivation of the reading brain, which is housed here in the occipital temporal and periotemporal, which is our word meat. They are not taking in the information and using what the brain is designed for reading. They are leaving it in their bronchia area, which is in your frontal lobe area, and that is where they're trying to find meaning and understanding. And it's inappropriate activation on the right side as well. They're trying to put a picture with the word. They see the word as a picture rather than a code. And so what happens within our therapy is we are rewiring that pathway. We are teaching kids how to go to the occipital temporal, to use the periotemporal, and then use the bronchia all together on the left side. Okay, here's our primary characteristics. These are, again, they are on page 3 and 4, or 2 of our handbooks of dyslexia. Primary characteristics: reading words in isolations, accurately decoding, read out loud, and spelling. Here, the fluency pieces with that, reading out loud, their fluency is low. Kids can have all, some, maybe one of these characteristics. It is still considered dyslexia, okay? I have a daughter with dyslexia. She is a great read worder in isolation. She can actually decode pretty well because her phonological processor is intact. Where her dyslexia comes out is in her fluency in the read aloud and in the spelling. She can't replicate our print. Okay, secondary consequences. If your child is struggling with these are the things that it'll lead to, because they don't want to read, so their comprehension will be low. Their vocabulary growth will be low. And so we want to make sure that we are intervening early. So I always set that up because we have a long history with our handbook. The first law was enacted in 1985. That was the first law that Texas legislature put into play, and it was Texas Education Code 38003. It is the same law that we use today. Our first handbook was in 1985, and we've had several iterations, and then our current one that we're going to talk about today was updated by the State Board of Education in September 7th, 2021, and it was enacted, actively going in February 10th, 2022. So what it did was it updated screener criteria. It moved us from a single pathway for finding dyslexia, and it updated standard dyslexia protocol instruction for specially designed instruction for our students with special education. And I'm going to show you some information from the handbook so that you can see all of that information. But those are the 3 big things that were changed within the handbook to make sure that we were aligned with fully investigating what is causing the disability so that we could design plans that are effective for our kids. Okay, so screening updates. Let's go into this. All right, I'm moving a little fast because I have a lot of information, so I want to make sure you get it. Federal requirements say that we are to child find. Actively processing of child find should be going on all the time. It is mandated by state law and Texas Education Code and federal law from the Individuals with Disability Act. This requirement then tells us that because dyslexia is a learning disability as defined by IDEA, we're required to fully investigate and child find these students. So, with the universal screeners that we give to kindergarten and first grade students, we are required by law to do kindergarten students screened by the end of the school year. First graders, it is by January 31st. This screener helps us as educators know who could be at risk and who is not.
Do private schools have to do that?
No, ma'am.
Is that federal?
It's federal, but private schools are a totally different entity. So let me put it this way. Child Fine's federal. Our Texas Education Code screeners are state. Private schools are required to do child fine, but they do not have to abide by what the state law says. Does that make sense?
No,
Because their funding is
that's only, the screener's only state?
Yes, state by state gets to decide so here's what the state of Texas said. The state of Texas said, we put this into 38003, that universal screeners, this law right here. It was through the House Bill 3 also, so this was 2019 legislature, and then we got House Bill 3 that year. This is where they updated the screener criteria. It's federally, we have to child fine, so we should have a process for ongoing child fine. The state said, hey, public and charters, this is what you will for sure do. This is our insurances that you're doing it. Because private schools are completely separate, they do not have to. I recommend it all the time because they're free. We have 2 for kindergarten and 3 that are free that anybody can use. So when I get a call from a private, I take them right to the early childhood data collection and selection tools so that they can see and have processes in place. I know. It's kind of a catch-22.
So the screener was passed in 2019 or?
Yes, the updated. We've had a screener since 2017,
That's what I thought it was.
16, but they updated the criteria, and I'll tell you what that looks like. Okay, so here's what they did in our latest iteration. We had, from 2018 on, we were screening kids in kindergarten with 8 different skills and 10 different skills in first grade. So that's not a screener, that's a diagnostic. And we already have a law for that. So what we did in 2021 is we looked at what is the heart of the disability. And the heart of the disability is this: phonological awareness and automaticity within that process. So we will now only screen for 2 things: phonological awareness and letter sound knowledge or naming fluency in kindergarten, and then phonological awareness, word reading accuracy or fluency in first grade. Remember, screeners are just to say who's potentially we need to watch them. Okay, it's not an evaluation, it's just these kiddos are struggling. Let's look at some other data, put it together, and we look at the profile of that kid. And that will be the determination. Should we go to evaluation? Should we do intervention? Should we not worry about them and put them back in instruction? Okay. So they also put in this new, on page 17, figure 2.5, to help schools and districts guide in that screening process. Because administering the screening to a first grader is the first step. And after that, we have a whole bunch of steps that we should have in place in our districts. And if we don't, we can work together to get those in place. And basically what it is I give a kindergartner a screener. Now I'm going to take those results and I'm going to look at the behavior that he exhibit or she exhibit during the screener. Other works, like teacher may have had him in small groups or her in small groups all year. Parents may have brought up those concerns in parent conferences. School work, I'm going to look at the samples, comparative samples from a student who is probably really clearly not at risk and a student who is at risk to see the difference. Because that makes a big difference, especially if I'm a person who doesn't really understand kindergarten and first grade teams. I need a pool. And I have a lot of people who, they taught in secondary and now they are working with elementary kids and we don't know that as well. And that's okay. That's good. That just means you're growing in your role awareness. They will look at those screeners and make 3 decisions actually. Does this student exhibit behaviors that could be at risk? And if it is a yes, now we're going to decide, do we want to do intervention to tease out gap, because we got a lot of gaps, or do we want to go full evaluation because our evidence is really leaning to this is really much more than a gap. And then that's the end of the screening process. After we send home a letter to parents, and it will say, hey, we screened your child. This is what we found. They were to be at risk. This is our decision that we made. We're going to go with an intervention. We would like to meet with you Here's the intervention information. So if you get that letter as a parent, don't be afraid of it. Because a lot of times when you get it, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, my kid's failing. No, they could just be, they need a couple more months to catch on to some of these things, and that's okay. But if you suspect it and you're seeing things at home, I would definitely reach out to the school district or to the school and just say, hey, what's going on with this? Can we meet and we talk about it?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
One of them is, will the child qualify for dyslexia screening in first grade if there is an intellectual disability listed on the IEP already?
So there are a couple of stopgaps with that. With the student who has an intellectual disability, the ARD committee and 504 committee can make the decision to not have the student screened because they already have a pervasive learning disability, and so that's a little different. Typically, our students with intellectual disabilities, we do not consider them as having a dyslexia on top of, because it is a pervasive language disability. The instruction is probably really good for them in a different setting, not in a typical dyslexia setting, but I often recommend when people come and ask me about how do I help these kids with intellectual disabilities start to read, because all kids can read. There's probably a 0.005% of kids who cannot read, and that's our students with very severe, profound communication. And I will say a structured literacy program is probably one of the best ways that you can get a student who has an intellectual disability at least basic language skills.
As a parent, I wouldn't know what pervasive means.
Okay, pervasive is holistic. Does that make sense? Like, it's not just a cognitive issue. There's actually more to it than just. Thank you for clarifying that for me. It's an overall ability. Their ability is lower, and so they are functioning at their IQ ability. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Whereas our students with a specific learning disability, which dyslexia falls under that category, typically have an average IQ, but they have some issues going on that may be below average. So I'll give you an example. My daughter, her IQ is at 110, but she has processing deficits and basic reading skill fluency that is in the 70s. That's a huge discrepancy. But her IQ and her work and her cognitive profile says she should be here, but because there's something going on that she needs specially designed instruction to fill that in. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think you explained it very well.
Thank you. Okay. So just so you, no, you're fine.
Follow-up question to that. Mm-hmm. Where would one find more information on structured reading programs?
So I've got a couple of resources I'm going to give you at the end of this presentation that you can have with the PDF if you capture that, and I'll go back to that first slide so that you at the end so that you can capture that PDF so you'll have it in your resources for sure. So these couple of slides are just talking about this breakdown of the figure 2.5, and it guides our districts to really understand what they should be doing. This is the beginning step. We're going to give our kids a screener. Every kid, with the exception of potentially any kids that are already identified with a learning disability that the ARD committee says this is not really appropriate for them. Those are very few and far between. And it just gives them the steps of, we looked at the screener, we're probably gonna have some kids that's pretty clear. They don't need anything from us. But we might have some kids that are like, ooh, these are questionable. Let's collect some more data, classroom, teacher, parent information, and let's look at this more closely to make this decision. Do we see some characteristics of dyslexia or other specific learning disabilities pop out? Because the teacher may bring up and say, hey, we've also got math issues here too, okay? And these are just the behavioral things, observations that your teachers are making while the student's taking the screener. We're looking for that lack of automaticity. How long does it take them to answer a question where typically it should be happening fairly quickly? If they're guessing or self-correcting, my daughter's a very good self-corrector. So let me tell you what she does. She'll start a word and she'll get into it and then she's like, oh, wait, it's this way. This is because she has some knowledge in her vocabulary because her IQ's up here. Her listening comprehension's in the 120s. She's got a good vocabulary base, but she doesn't have the automaticity to be able to say the word quickly, okay? All right. Here are some other data sources that we can pull for those kiddos as well. You'll see a first grader, I'm gonna go pull their kindergarten screener from last year. Because if they pinged at that time, they've had intervention, and now they're pinging, that tells me we probably should consider evaluation for them. Okay, along with observations, teacher observations, parent-teacher conferences. So I remember as a parent, I remember going into kindergarten and I expressed my concern in October. Then I expressed it again in May or in March. Then in first grade, I expressed it in October. And by December, I said, forget this, I'm going to initiate a full individual evaluation. So there's 3 separate times as a parent on record, I said there's an issue. So that's really powerful information to bring to the table when we're looking. Do we want to do more intervention or do we want to go to evaluation? Okay, work sample, intervention history. My daughter was in intervention all through kindergarten, all through the first semester of first grade. That should be a clear sign. Sometimes we are still fighting old practices of what I've called forever RTIs. And it is very clear in the handbook, we are not to delay or deny evaluations due to lack of RTI. We're working on it. I'm working on as fast and furious in Region 10 as I can. It's hard, very, very hard. And then if we decide and make the decision, we want to continue them or do intervention, or we're going to go and seek a full individual evaluation. Okay? And then that stops there, and we'll talk evaluation here in just a minute. So that is for any time. Let's say you get that letter back and you're concerned and you've had concerns for a while, you as a parent can initiate a full individual evaluation. Some tips that I would say, put it in writing, put it in an email, so it's time-stamped, and I would put read receipt on it so that you have that protection, or put it in a formal letter and deliver it and have a copy and have whomever you deliver it sign off on it, because you just want that protection for yourself as a parent. And what we're supposed to do as public school employees is we are then supposed to take that, and then we have 10 days to make a decision based on data that we pull from that student. Do we see the need for an evaluation or not? And school districts do have that right to reserve the right that if we don't see the need for evaluation, we're not going to waste the resources on that, because we may have other kids that have other needs. And so don't be alarmed at that. If you disagree with it, there's a whole dispute resolution process. I'm going to give it to you as well. Okay? I know.
There's a dispute process for everything.
Everything. Yeah, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because we don't want it to be a big end all be all. So when we're interpreting the data, we just want to make sure we are looking at the central question is the student struggling with reading despite good instruction, despite intervention? Then we want to go to evaluation. Okay. All right, let's talk assessment. So this was the biggest change in our handbook. Here's what we went from. We went from in 2018, districts had the option to, if we suspected dyslexia, just give a focused dyslexia evaluation under 504, or we could give a more comprehensive full individual evaluation under IDEA. What the federal government Office of Special Education noticed was that we were relying on the focused 504 when we really should be doing under IDEA, which is federal, offering a full individual evaluation and letting parents choose. Okay, so that's what they did. Now we've streamlined this process to where if we suspect a disability, such as dyslexia, we are going to seek parental consent for a full individual initial evaluation. You are not signing away your child's rights in any way, shape, or form. I want to make that very clear.
Or labeling them special.
Or enabling them, labeling special, absolutely not. What you are allowing the school district to do by consenting to a full individual evaluation is getting a much better picture of where your student is struggling. That is what we are able to do with that. So Figure 3.8 is on page 34 of the handbook, is the outline that districts will then tailor their processes to. Okay, so basically what it looks like, I'm going to go through these in a couple. It starts at the top with box A. And when we have the universal screener, do we see it? If we don't, we're going to send kids back. But we also have this box over here in all grades. If a student's suspected of having dyslexia or other disabilities, we're going to collect and review some data. Okay, that's important. We don't want to just say we're going to do this for kindergarten and first. We're doing it for all grades. I'm a proponent of having a screener at every grade, but the legislature does not listen to me. Okay. But I think we have a gap in our processes 3rd through 12th. That's just me. So I really coach districts on having some way of catching kids 3rd through 5th, because after they go to secondary, it's real hard to catch them. Very, very hard. They've gained a lot of good compensation skills, and they will mask it, but they're working really hard and they shouldn't have to. Okay, so we've collected some data and we're looking at this data and we're looking for characteristics of dyslexia or maybe some other disabilities happening, because dyslexia is basic reading and basic reading skills and fluency, but we also have basic reading comprehension too. So maybe they have intact language skills, but their comprehension's down. And that could be another specific reading difficulty that we want to look at. We sit down and we look through this information and we make these two decisions. Do we see, or do we need to just do a little, it just looks like a gap maybe? Or do we see if we have so much evidence that we want to ask the parent for a full individual evaluation? And if we see that, then we're going to ask the parent. This is supposed to be a way for us to be able to get a full picture, because I'll tell you, dyslexia is often, it exists with other things. What I mean by that is comorbid. So with my daughter, she has ADD. That messes with processing. That messes with short-term memory. That's going to be in her executive functioning, disorganization, behavioral situations. If I, as a parent, just did a focused evaluation, she would receive the services that she needs, and we would see, yes, she has dyslexia. But I would not have known about her short-term working memory deficits or her processing deficits that all contribute to not just reading, but math and sciences and social studies and fine arts and everything that she does. So we will see that it will be informed. So when we are asking for that, we're just saying, hey, this is what we see. Here's the evidence. We want to give you this procedural safeguard so that you understand that you are not consenting to special education. You are consenting to us to evaluate to see what your daughter or your child is doing. Okay? We will also give a proper prior written notice. And we will let you know this is what we're going to do, and we're going to begin, the window opens this, okay? We want to make sure that you understand that you have lots of protections and rights afforded to you under IDEA. And I just got off the phone with a parent yesterday, and she's had her daughter on 504 for a long time, but her daughter is struggling now that she's older. And my recommendation was, why don't you ask for a full individual evaluation? And she goes, I can do that? Absolutely, absolutely you can. You get so much more protections and rights under IDEA that you don't get with just 504. So that is part of the catalyst for the change in our evaluation processes. So we will see if you as a parent then decide, I don't want that, and that is your right. Then we will more than likely ask for, then can we just look at the dyslexia piece under 504? And that is all we will look at, and that is all we will address in the 504 should we find the disability. Understand that at any time, you can then say, you know what, I changed my mind, let's do a full individual evaluation. And we can do that. We can shift gears and do that. But if you do go 504 route, understand that we want to address behavior, we want to address processing deficits, math issues, anything like that. Okay? And so just understand that we won't persuade or encourage you. We're going to ask for a full individual evaluation. We will not say, if you don't want that, we can do a 504. We're not allowed to. It's in the law. But what we can do is if you deny that, then we can ask, okay, we understand that piece. Will you let us at least look at dyslexia in the focused 504? So they're not trying to not trick you or not trying to, I don't know how to explain it. A parent gave it to me this really, really good. She felt like they were being deceived, and that is not the intent. The intent is to go in with what we should have been doing for 30 plus years, which is offering full individual evaluations, which, by the way, all 49 other states do. Texas is the only one that does it. So we're trying to change 35 plus years of ways of doing some stuff to match what the federal law says. Okay. So here are the differences between, you have more rights under an IDA evaluation. There's a required timeline. It's 45 days, and then within 60 days we have an ART. We are going to notify you of the specific tools we're using. We can look at all areas. And if you want, you can have an independent evaluation if you disagree. 504, wide open. The federal government does not give you any kind of specific timeline. The district can take all year if they wanted to. It's not good, but they could. They don't have to inform you of the tools they're using. They can do anything. They can look at a variety of sources, but it will only be targeted to that one suspected issue. There really are, parents are not required to be a part of the 504 committee. That is the piece that I get a hang up the most about, because in the ARD under IDEA, you must be there. They must provide you the opportunity to attend. I don't get to go to my daughter's ARD next Thursday, but I'm going to be there in Zoom because I'm out of town. So they have to make exceptions so that I can be a part of that committee. Big difference between 504. So just understand those differences is really, really powerful. And if you disagree with that 504 evaluation, you have no rights to request an independent evaluation. That's a big one. That's a big one. And you know, I mean, I probably should have requested an independent evaluation 4 years ago when I first went through, because I disagree with some of the things in that, but I didn't. So that is a huge, huge advantage to having your student evaluated fully and an individual evaluation than to just doing a 504 focus. All right, so then we will conduct the evaluation, either 504 or FIIE, and we make a decision. For 504, if we see that there is a disability that limits one or more of the life's major activities, such as learning, reading, writing, and spelling, then you will qualify for a 504, okay? For kiddos in the ARD committee, we do the full individual evaluation, and then we come to ARD and we look to see if the evidence from the full individual evaluation is an IDEA eligible condition, and there are 13 of them. SLD, specific learning disability, is the one that are like dyslexia, basic reading comprehension, math computation. Those things are underneath that umbrella of SLD. But we have to see the evidence that it exists, and it is an ARD committee decision. It is not a one-person committee decision. Shouldn't be. So just understanding that the key takeaways is that then we also, in the prongs here, we found an eligible condition. That does not mean your student is special ed. What it means is we have a condition we see that needs us to look at this further, okay? So here's the second prong of IDEA eligibility. Condition, and then need for specially designed instruction. Those two things have to exist. Because I can have a dyslexia condition and not need specially designed. I may only need standard protocol dyslexia instruction and accommodations. I don't need to have resource and inclusion and any kind of related service or anything like that. And that is absolutely valuable information to have in a full individual evaluation. And our committee can decide, you know what? We don't meet eligibility for special education. Let's dismiss, and we're gonna convene our 504. And we're going to service the student under 504. 504 was designed as a service pathway, not a identification pathway. Or we could see in the ARD committee, the student's got a disability, some stuff's happening here, got long-term retrieval issues, meaning we can't pull stuff out efficiently and use it. We've got maybe some executive function because we might have some ADD or ADHD going on with them. Maybe their processing speed's a little slow. Sounds like we might need to offer them more support than just dyslexia instruction and accommodations. Maybe they need some inclusion support. Maybe they need their dyslexia instruction to be specially designed for them. You know, so that is also an option. And so if we see that they are meeting eligibility for special education, eligibility means I have an eligible condition and I need specially designed instruction. Then the ARD committee decides, does the student qualify for special education? And you as a parent have the right to say, no, I don't want my child under SPED. Can you give this under 504? Absolutely. You will not have as many protections, but we can, okay? But getting the initial evaluation is super important so we know all the data and know what's happening, what's influencing your child to not be as successful as you would want them to be. Okay, so this is the piece here. You are a required member of that committee. They are not allowed to hold an ARD without your permission. You then get a stake in whether your child is special ed or not. And if there's a member of the ARD committee that says no, then we must come and do some mediation and figure out what we want to do for servicing a student, okay? All right, so if you disagree with the refusal, I did put in the dispute resolution process here for you. That link goes right to that. But if you just put in TEA dispute resolution or special education dispute resolution in the web browser, it gives you the entire page. And there is something for every single thing, everything. Evaluation, anything that you can think of, there's a dispute process. Some of those options include mediation, due process hearings, complaints to TEA, and TEA takes those very, very seriously and they investigate them, okay? You can also ask for an independent educational evaluation through this, and then you can make sure that you get what you feel is right for your family and for your student. Okay, last piece, and I don't know how I'm doing on my time. Oh, I actually doing pretty good. Okay, I'm proud of myself.
Let me give you some questions.
Okay.
But these go to instruction.
Okay.
And you may cover these, but let me go ahead and front load you, and then that way you can know that this is something that someone is asking about. They're asking if there are any requirements of which literacy program should be used, and can a district decide not to provide that program if there is one? And then can it be included in the IEP specific resources? So example, naming that Lexia program or whatever they might be recommending. And I think that captures all of those questions. So
Okay, so
go girl.
let me go and I'm gonna weave in some answers to that. And if I leave something out, you make sure you go back in the chat and you say, hey, she didn't answer this. Okay, so let's talk dyslexia instruction. This is chapter 4 of our handbook. Chapter 4 of our handbook lays out the components of evidence-based dyslexia instruction that a district must provide within their chosen program. We do not have a list we can choose from. We are not required to provide a certain program. Because there's lots of them out there, what we have to do as a district is look at this. It's from page 40 to 45 in the Dyslexia Handbook. Look at the program we are deciding to fund and make sure that it does all of these things. Okay? I will tell you that our big 3, 4, 5, there's 5 of them that are large scale programs that are across the state. They all provide this. Okay? Also, on page 44 and 45, the handbook lays out the manner in which we must deliver the program. Okay? Simultaneous, it must be multisensory. Majority of our structured literacy programs, and that's what we call dyslexia instruction, are multisensory. They are systematic and cumulative, meaning we will go from piece by piece by piece, and we have built-in spiral back review. Okay? It must be explicit. All of them are explicit. You don't want an instructional program that's not explicit, and that would be silly. So districts have figured that out. It's diagnostic to automaticity. So what it means is we are continually assessing your students' progress and adjusting within our program to make sure your student is getting that to automaticity, meaning it must be an automatic skill that happens. It's synthetic instruction. That is whole to part. So part to whole. Part to whole is synthetic instruction. So let me give you an example. Cat, act, those are parts. Now let's blend it together. Cat, that's a whole. So we teach students sounds first, sound letter correspondent, then we start putting them together to make words, to make sentences, to make paragraphs. That's part to whole. And it must also have whole to part, analytic. So we are looking at whole words, morphophonemic. And now we're going to break it down. Morpho has a meaning, phonemic has a meaning. And we need to understand the morphology of words in order to be analytic instruction. So that is the piece here at the bottom with syntax, morphology, and orthography will help us do analytic instruction. Phonology, sound symbol, and syllabication helps us do synthetic instruction. These other 2 pieces, comprehension and fluency, are there because the heart of the disability tells us if it's not automatic with fluency, we will lose comprehension. Okay? So, to the question of, do districts have to choose a specific program? Here's what I get all the time. If you have a child enrolled in your campus, there must be a dyslexia program provided for them. The district decides what that program is based on pages 40 to 45 that meet these criteria in the handbook. Okay? Does that make sense? We don't want TEA telling us what we can and can't do, because they love to do that a lot, right? We don't want the legislature saying you can only use this one, because what if that one doesn't work for your kid? Now you are bound to make it work for your kid, and that doesn't work for them. I'll give you a really good example. My daughter was in take flight for a year and a half. It didn't work for her. Her processing speed deficits and working memory were it was too much of a cognitive load for her at the time. She was switched to an MTA program within the district. She's been much more successful. Now that she's older and more mature and has some skills, she's going to switch back to take flight because she can handle it cognitively. That's what you want for your kid. You want the district to be able to tailor to their community and to the community. Okay.
Was there? You said MTA?
MTA, multi-sensory teaching approach. They're in Forney. Yeah. What was that question? Do we have to name it in the IEP?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what you don't want in your IEP.
The names of programs.
You don't want the names of programs. Because if you pull your student out and put them in another district, they won't have that program. Now you've got to go back to ARD and you've got to redo it. What you want for them to say is you want them to say that they will be provided dyslexia instruction based on the critical evidence-based components listed in the dyslexia handbook. That's what you want. Okay? You can even request that they list out those components in case you move to another state, because another state has different components. Sounds funny, right? My niece is in Oklahoma. They finally adopted their first handbook. They don't have any of this in their handbook. So I Zoom in her with me and my daughter, and we do our basic language skill lessons together because I'm not confident that she's getting what she needs. And neither is my sister. Okay? But if I were to pull my daughter out and we move to Oklahoma, now that state is obligated to provide something for my daughter, critical evidence-based components listed here. Okay? Does that make sense? That better answer that question? So here was the other thing that we had for years, and I mean years, 30 plus years, we have had what we called, and we call it in the state of Texas, standard dyslexia protocol instruction, where only these kids who could survive in this gen ed world with this standard protocol dyslexia instruction had access to it with the label of dyslexia. And our kids who were in special education didn't get the label. And without the label, you do not have access to the program. Well, that was not right. Okay. We were excluding kids from great instruction. So the first thing that happened on September 8th, Dr. Justin Porter from TEA wrote to OSEP and said, hey, we do this in the state of Texas. We call it this. Would this be considered specially designed instruction? And guess what OSEP said? That looks real good for some kids that need some specially designed instruction. So yes, because it's funded through general ed funds, everybody should have access to it. Everybody. And so we can assign what we would typically call standard dyslexia protocol instruction on a student's IEP. We can put it in their schedule of services. We can put it in the ARD notes. We can put it in the specific areas. What we don't want is, and we can say standard protocol dyslexia instruction that aligns with the handbook, critical evidence-based components. That's how we want it to read on that IEP so that it protects your child if they move from district to district to district. Okay? And it can be specially designed. What does that mean? We're still trying to figure that out. My recommendation,
Whatever the teacher
because we
thinks.
have a big debate going on with fidelity right now. And my thought is, pacing has nothing to do with fidelity. Here's one big thing that we figured out with our kids who have who need specially designed instruction. Typically, it's because the pacing needs to be slowed down because it takes them longer to get automaticity. Well, our friends over here with standard dyslexia protocol said, no, we've got to get through this and we've got to be finished in 2 years. That's not how they were intended and set up. That's the training program. That's not how kids live in real life. Kids in real life, even these kids over here, may take them 3, 4 years to get to automaticity so that we remediate it appropriately. So we're working with it, and we can decide what it looks like in the ARD committee. We can decide. And that's the beauty of having your student under the IDEA umbrella. Okay. Providers. So here's another question that I get. Here's, they need to be highly trained providers of dyslexia instruction. They must have specific training in the critical components, meaning they must have specific training in the program you are providing, program or programs, if you have more than one. They must deliver it in the way that it was intended. They do not have to hold a specific license. So what we do have to have is they have to have a bachelor's degree and an SBEC certification if you are in a public education school. If you are, and then trained in the program. If you are a charter or open enrollment, they have to have a bachelor's degree and training in the program, because some of our charters don't hire certified teachers. Sometimes they're in the middle of certification, or it's just a very different rules. Private schools are not held to this at all. Okay? So students receiving special education do not have to have their specially designed instruction standard dyslexia protocol delivered by the special education person. You want the person who's most highly trained. Special education people maybe not have been trained in this specific program, but your dyslexia interventionist or your CAUT, your certified academic language therapist, or your dyslexia therapist are the people who've been specially trained. Advocate for your child to get their specially designed dyslexia instruction from them. CAUT or dyslexia therapist. A licensed dyslexia therapist, sorry. Your campus does not have to hire them. They don't have to have them on staff. But if you're lucky enough to be in a district that has the ability to hire a CAUT or a licensed dyslexia therapist, those are the people you want delivering instruction to your kids, okay? So that was a big issue we've been working through for the last year. Who has to deliver this? You know, and our CAUTs are arguing back with SPED, and SPED's arguing back with, and we're like, stop. We're all going to take care of kids, okay?
Okay, what's the word you're saying, that CAUT?
CAUT, Certified Academic Language Therapist.
I know you said it, and I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. So we have two levels. We have a CAUT, which is a Certified Academic Language Practitioner. And then we have a CAUT, which is a Certified Academic Language Therapist. In the state of
Texas, has to have the additional.
Correct. In the state of Texas, you have to get your CAUT certification to apply to be an LDT, which is a licensed dyslexia therapist in the state of Texas. By the way, we're the only state that does that.
That would be why I didn't know what you were talking about.
All other states, you can be a CAUT or a CAUT, or you can then go through, and then there's a whole, it's a hot mess. Dyslexia is a mess, let me tell you. Because we have two governing bodies. We have IDA, International Dyslexia Association, and then we have ALTA, Academic Language Therapy Association.
I've not heard.
And they argue with each other. They argue with each other. It's amazing.
South Dakota.
So dyslexia itself is.
I know.
Make it hard.
Right.
So the Take Flight program, though, that's 2 years, so does it have to be then 2 years based on the program then?
No, so Karen Everett, who wrote the program and trained on the program, their training and most trainings for a CAUT level certification are a 2-year program, because we have to get 700 hours, service hours with kids. It's not written to be 2 years. It's written to go as fast as we need to go, but as slow as we need to go for the kid.
Okay.
It could take some kids 3 or 4 or 5 years. That is a huge issue we are having right now. I personally see it a lot. Lots of kids are being pulled out of Take Flight and put in somewhere else, or saying they don't meet this criteria. And that's not what Take Flight was designed for. And Karen will tell them that. She's the writer of the program. She will say your training is 2 years, because you have to have intensive training. But the program is not a 2-year program. The program is as long as the kid needs it to be. Okay, good questions.
Your big 5 programs you were talking about earlier, what are those big 5?
I don't want to name them because I don't want.
Okay, then I'm not.
Here's what happens, parents. You hear me say something, and then you go to the district and you will say, oh, well, Region 10 said you have to have this. I can't do that.
Is there a website that you can go to look at available programs?
I'm going to give you.
They would, yes.
You can put in dyslexia therapy instruction, and it will pull up different programs. Okay. And I'll give you a couple of other resources, but I don't want to do that because I've been brought up in a couple of board meetings and I'm tired of that, folks. Then I've got to go talk to my director why my name was brought up in a board meeting, okay? It's not fun. It's like going to the superintendent's office. All right, so dysgraphia. Let's just hone in here because there was a couple of changes. The referral process, if we suspect dysgraphia, is the same as dyslexia. We will ask for a full initial evaluation and we will follow the exact same process under IDEA, okay? And so that way we fully investigate what could be happening. Lots of our kids with dyslexia have dysgraphia. Some of our kids with dysgraphia don't have dyslexia, okay? So, and there's some kids with dyslexia that don't have dysgraphia. So they're two distinctly different disabilities, but they are related in the nature in that it is a language disability, okay? And then they added for evaluation, they added in spelling and the academic skills. So we're going to hone in on, because spelling is automaticity. And when we look at memory sequence and our orthographic processing, can we recall the correct letter sequence in the correct order in which it should go in? Okay, so they added that in. And that really is it for dysgraphia. That's all that's changed with dysgraphia. Okay, those are our big updates. Any questions that I didn't get to?
Going back to ID, so if the child has ID as eligibility on the IEP and is in a centralized classroom, can they request dyslexia instruction?
It won't be called dyslexia instruction because it would be like structured language instruction is what I would want for my kid with an intellectual disability. You can request that they use a structured language program, and that can be Orton-Gillingham based, which is all of our dyslexia programs are Orton-Gillingham based, but it would not be dyslexia instruction. They wouldn't be pulled with dyslexia instruction like our other students, because they need it very, very specialized. And it looks very different for students with an intellectual disability. But structured language literacy is a good thing for them, and I would definitely advocate. Most of our rooms that have a content room like that have structured language literacy for them. More than likely they do. They probably, it's not named like one of our dyslexia programs. Okay, anything else? Okay. So some resources. These are my go-to resources for dyslexia in the state of Texas. I do have a couple here that for parents for sure, I would go to IDEA's parents, whatever parents should know. They have a great website. And the Austin Dyslexia Center of Austin Parent Resources are very good. It's what I used when I first started trying to investigate my daughter's disability. Also, Yale's Center for Dyslexia and Creative Parent website. So Yale's is based off of Sally Shaywitz, and she is our guru, go-to researcher for dyslexia instruction within the last 20 years. Her son is starting to take over for her at the Yale Center, but it is a great parent resource website. Also, this is the ALTA, that's the Academic Language Therapy Association. They have a parent resource for you too, where you can find providers, programs, and things like that. I put in the handbook changes, and then I have my own personal SMORE here. If you would like to sign up for my SMORE, I will add this into the presentation because I send it out about every couple of months, but it's just got different things that you may be interested in, and I'll send that out to you guys after today for that. So lots of different parent information. It's very, very, I try to make it as parent friendly as possible. I find a lot of social media resources because frankly, that's what we live off of. And we've got some great resources out there for parents, okay? And we've got, if you're not a member of Partner Network Resource, Partner Resource Network, which I hope you are, or Stand Up LD, you need to be involved with Stand Up LD, okay? They're another really, really good parent organization who is working to bring together parents and educators in the same platform, okay? Thank you all. I appreciate it. If anybody needs anything, I will make sure that you get this. I'm going to go back to the very front of the slide and I'm going to put it up here for you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Sorry, look away, look away, look away. Here you go. I didn't get it to the end of the slide deck, but I'll make sure that Jim gets this and gets this out to you guys, okay? Thank you so much. Anything in the chat? Okay, perfect.
Thank you.